Hey guys, it's Tyler again. I wanted to make a video response to two people, namely Crispy and Zonalar, who really inspired me with both of their recent live streams to make a shorter form video that hopefully is of some use to the same people, hopefully hits different people, and that is using different senses in RPGs. What do I mean by that? Do I mean, oh, the GM should just rattle on about you smell this, you hear that, you feel that? No, no, no. I mean, as players, we should be interacting with the world to get that information or mentioning that information ourselves, right? Too often we see characters just yakking at each other in dialogue, and we have no idea where they are. It's hard to read their emotion other than their tone of voice because what are they? They're talking heads. We don't see any tugging at the collar, you know, uh, my character Skorik pushes his eyebrows up and leans into a contemplative state. And I don't have to say anything. That can move the conversation along. Then an NPC or one of the other player characters can hit something on your mind. We can have this mix of dialogue, of maybe a talking head. Maybe a character, walks into the room, cracks open the door, pokes his head in. Is everything all right? And then we have, things keep going. This isn't just to add reality, depth, immersion. It's a practical issue, right? You see people missing their characters so often, not knowing where their own character is, because they never say where their character is. They never say what their character's doing. They never say their character's eyes dart around the room as we're having this conversation. Well, I'll be right on that real quick. My eyes dart over to an AK with a aftermarket muzzle brake on it, just barely poking out over the reloading bench. That's a cool trick you can use. That's something that Space Roadie mentioned in the Discord, which is a really good habit to build. He mentions movies. Even just looking around, how would you describe the room that you're in right now? How would you describe your actions as you go around the room as a character? And that's where it's different than acting. You're, one, not following a script. Two, it's different than improv because you're the arbiter of your own character. Nobody else can say what your character does, what happens to you. And three, you're describing what you're not physically doing the thing as you would in LARP, as you would in improv. You're describing what your character does, and you're bound by the game mechanics. That's all it is, right? It's really quite simple. But yeah, other things. Gesticulating, My character's very handsy. He talks with his hands a lot. He's waving his hands up and down. Maybe he's a fast talker trying to get you to buy something that you really shouldn't. Trying to move this hot good, He doesn't want you to know that mere moments ago he had just looted this off of a dead body in a dungeon that he had found. The character walks up reeking of filth because he's been fighting undead for days on end. Those senses never get activated. And further, when you imply these sensations, either as a GM or as a player, the mechanics should fit that, right? That recent game, 3D6 Down the Line, that Crispy looked at, it was really frustrating to see, okay, you're not taking any HP damage from this, but your arm is melted down to the bone. Well, hang on. This is partially the player's fault for not roleplay solves everything. Yeah, he definitely should be roleplay. GM says, yeah, your arm is melted down to the bone. You should be roleplaying that, regardless of what the hit point damage was. But it's hard to roleplay it when the mechanics don't fit that, right? So when you're bringing up these other senses, pain, maybe it's just totally cooked it so much that you don't even feel it. That could be a cool scene to roleplay. You just look, and there's just abject horror as I look down at my arm and rotate it around, and there's nothing left. A sort of state of shock. That would be cool. Um, I'm reminded of Baki, of Doporochi, who has his hand cut off, and there's a brief moment of shock, and then he starts punching the guy with the stub and goes, thanks, I was always worried about breaking my fingers. Now I don't have to hold back." It's such a cool scene. It says, it's ridiculous. It tells you something about the character, you know? Uh, but it's not all done through dialogue. You know, he looks down, it pans over the stump. It's even books are not done all through dialogue. Rather, other than like the rare, I forget what that type of book is called, where it's all done through letters being written back and forth. But even within the letter, they're going to describe, something that happened to them. They're going to just, if it's a war correspondence novel, it's going to just usually one of the characters in their letters is describing the bombs falling, the shrapnel poking through somebody's leg all the way through one side and out the other. The smell of gangrene that you can just tell that death is in the air. Um, the sounds, the tinnitus, that is something that almost never gets brought up with games that have guns in them. It's something that almost never gets brought up even with movies and other media. So it may be a tone thing, but if you're in a grittier, more realistic tone, maybe you're deaf for a combat. Maybe you're trying to talk tactics like, "Oh, I've got him. He's hit. You can rush him. I'm reloading," and all the other guy's seeing is. And you might have to tap like, I can't hear you, man. I'm totally freaking deaf. I lost my ear pro. It got blown off in the backblast, something like that. We'd have these cool back and forth interactions. Start stroking my beard in contemplation. Even the little stuff like that doesn't really tell you anything. It tells you what the character's doing. It tells you where my hand isn't. It tells you my hand's not on my pistol. It tells you I'm not threatening. Whereas if we don't want to get into the situation where we have to go, "Oh, so is your hand like on your pistol? Is your hand like, the fewer questions that we have to ask out of character, preferably zero. That's the goal, is to have zero out of character questions, right? That way it just goes smoothly, the better. Likewise, the less I have to yank you around if I'm the GM and go, "Okay, so what are you guys doing? Where are you?" The better. Because when we do that, what happens? "Oh, GM, I wasn't. Hold on, I was like over there. I was doing a thing. Actually, I wanted to be over here. Can I be over here, GM?" Just move yourself. If you move yourself, we don't run into this issue. GMs don't move people around. Don't move people around and just let like an awkward silence fall and wait for one of the players to move something. If it's way too long and you're in the same scene, then you can have an NPC or something move in and go, "Hey, just move on." Maybe something's attacking the building that you're in. You have a push, and what's a way to do that that's not through dialogue, that's not through some of the typical, the visual, the sound senses? The ground rumbling below your feet. Maybe you're in an air raid shelter and it's being bombed, and it's clear that the shelter isn't going to last. Your players are, their characters are planning on just sitting there waiting the war out, but now and it's clear that that's a really kind of a boring scene. Everybody's got plenty of food. Everything's just been going really well for what's supposed to be a war drama sort of game. And so it's like, okay, we gotta do something here. We gotta hit the building a little harder. Turns out you're in Dresden. Playing some Slaughterhouse-5. That could be cool. I need to reread Vonnegut. Yeah, let me know what you guys think. Those are really cool. I'll link to Zonalar's stream about mindscaping and Crispy's last stream as well in the description below. Just wanted to be a little short thing there. Thanks. See you guys.